Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real Estate Ruminations. This is a weekly Q&A show on behalf of the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel, where we basically, as real time as it gets, answer questions from current clients, prospective clients, anyone interested in Southwest Florida, in the vein that potentially, if someone's asking a question, a lot more people are also wondering the same thing. We get way more specific here. So someone that maybe is a couple steps ahead of you in a relocation to the state of Florida, then by going niche and situational rather than always being at this level of macro best places to live, we can get into layers of value that we cannot get into any other way. My name is Adam Hancock. I have about 10 questions on the list today, and we're just going to jump right in. Question number one, no one ever talks about closing costs, and every state is different. What would be a typical closing cost of, let's say, a $700,000 new construction home in the state of Florida? I thought this would be a good opportunity to actually just walk through real settlement statements. So we have a lot of examples, thankfully. So I pulled one from MI Homes, one from Neil, and one from Taylor Morrison. And then you can see really here with a broad brush, what's going to be in every single fee or like every single closing arrangement. But you're also going to see how much the individual person and their situation affects the actual cost of closing. All right. So as a blanket statement, builders, when you buy a new construction home, most of the items are pushed onto the buyer. But let's just walk through as much brevity as I can do here. First one we're going to walk through is MI Homes. This was the highest closing cost of my three scenarios in percentage of purchase price was $790,000. They only borrowed about $300,000. And this is how it broke down. So first bucket you got to look at are loan charges. So this only applies obviously if you're financing. Big thing that hurt or helped, depending on how you look at it, this particular borrower is that they bought points. Points are prepaid interest that you're exchanging, that you're going to pay in a lump sum for a lower interest rate against that whole principal. They paid $5,800 to buy 2 percentage points down. Administrative fee, appraisal, flood certification, prepaid interest, and recording fees brought you to $9,401, which more than half of that was an application to this particular buyer that might not apply to you. Impounds is our next bucket. That is prepaids. So this is stuff that's not really fees as much as it's if you're escrowing a mortgage that, depending on who you are, you're prepaying a certain amount on insurance and taxes. So it's just advance, not really a fee that doesn't go away. Insurance, they bought 3 months or they prepaid 3 months here. Taxes were 11 months. And then they had an aggregate adjustment fee that equaled $3,000 total. And be careful about taxes and some of that stuff if you're buying a new construction home, because a lot of it's based on the land before you had a home on it. So there's a big uh-oh for many people on year 2 or 3, even if the mortgage company is promising they're trying to guess. But all right, so that's second bucket. Third is title and escrow. That one's going to be more commodity based and standardized than most. Title and search, lender's policy, settlement fee, owner's policy. This adds up to $5,362. This is going to protect you from a lot of potential liens or things that pop up later, which hopefully you'll never have an issue with. Fourth bucket is government fees and taxes. So you have recording fees, doc stamps, mortgage tax. This is basically like they're doing you the favor of, putting this in public record and you're paying a fee in exchange for that. $7,393. $5,530 of that $7,000 was doc stamps deed. Fifth bucket, miscellaneous /HOA /insurance. So HOA hazard insurance premium. This is one that you might be like, what the hell is this? When you look through it, if you haven't done this a bunch of times. So there is a blanket hazard insurance with a lot of HOAs that basically you pay your annual thing up front and contribute to the communal stuff, basically structures, the landscaping, all those things. They kind of sneak in this like hazard insurance premium into that, and each person pays, and that was $1,900. HOA administrative fee, HOA capital contribution, HOA quarterly dues. So it looks like they paid 1/4 of the quarterly dues in a prepaid here. The rest are just straight fees. And then the other survey, CDD, proration, county taxes equals $620. So this was $66,000 the way this added up, which was 8.3% of the purchase price, which had nothing to do with down payment. So, obviously not ideal, but if you look at how much they paid in prepaid taxes, how much they bought points down, things like this, you could see how some of these things at least won't affect you. All right. Scenario number 2, we're going to move quick here. Taylor Morrison Homes. This is a lot more normal one because they actually did a pretty normal mortgage on a kind of high-priced house. Purchase price was $926,000. They financed $806K of it. But when it all shakes out, they only had 3.4% of the purchase price went into closing costs. So you can kind of see the difference there. Loan charges, that same kind of bucket. So they didn't buy any points in advance. So theirs shook out to only $3,200 instead of almost $10,000 on loan charges. Prepaids, they only did 3 months of insurance, 3 months of taxes. So that's only $3,600. The other buyer had 11 months of taxes. Title and escrow, normal stuff. Settlement fees still in there. Lender's policy, owner's policy. This was $6,200. The previous example was $5,300, and this house cost $926, and that other one cost $790. So you can see how that one's I could probably take to the bank. What that's going to be on everyone's. Government fees and taxes are going to be similar. Recording, intangible tax, doc stamps, mortgage tax, $11K, which $6,400 of it went into that deed doc stamps again. Miscellaneous HOA, again, Taylor Morrison community. They had an admin fee, initiation fee, and prorated dues. No hazard insurance here, which saves them several $1,000s. And then other was $700. So $31K is all they had to, I guess. That's not nothing, but $31,000 for a almost $1 million home. And then number 3 is a Neal community, just to give you, Neal, Taylor Morrison, MI not as much, but Neal and Taylor Morrison build like a lot of the properties around Southwest Florida. So I thought they'd be good examples. This was a $1 million house. They only financed $250K of it. You can kind of see the commonality here of you finance more, it's going to cost more, basically. Borrower and closing costs here were 4.4%. So this was in the middle. 3% on our last one, and then 8% on the one before that. Loan charges here, this person, again, you're kind of seeing here, they bought down 4.8% on points for the loan. So they put almost $13,000 into buying down points because they wanted, the total cost of ownership to be less later as they go here. So total loan charges were $15,000, which 13 came from just that one bucket. Prepaids, only 3 months. Insurance taxes, $4K. Title and escrow, almost identical to the last house, $6,400. So you could say if you had conservative prepaids, if you take prepaids, title escrow, government fees, they're going to be very similar house to house. So this house cost $1 million. You have $9,000 in government. Add another, so you add title and escrow, that takes you to about $15,500. And then prepaids take you to about 19. So $1 million house, $19,000 just right off the bat. Are you going to buy down points? And does your HOA have any of these extra fees? And that would be the variability between loan to loan. Government fees and taxes, just mentioned that one. So then this one, another example of an HOA contribution that's more similar to the first one. So an admin fee, $200. Capital contribution to the HOA to get into this community was $5,460. They had prepaid quarterly fees. Looks like they paid 3 quarters, 2 or 3 quarters. Should be 3 quarters probably. No, 2 quarters. So 2 quarters, $2,166. And then a hazard insurance premium was $2,900. So in this particular community, they paid like almost $8,000 in HOA capital contribution and a hazard insurance policy for that HOA. So you're going to be probably somewhere in between. I would say maybe, a 4.5% percentage point if you went into a normal master plan community on closing costs that don't have to do with down payment would be a safe broad brush to apply to your home. Okay. So where are we at? 9 minutes. Okay. That was a little bit long. All right. We'll move quick. Question number 2, new to Florida, wanting to buy, but scared of mold in homes. Want to look for what should I look for to avoid a moldy home or how to build/renovate to make sure mold doesn't grow. Okay. So this one's like really situational, but one thing I would say is if you're buying a new construction home, it rains a ton in Florida. Depending on the stage at which you buy that home, you're going to have this open exposed drywall for months potentially where it's getting rained on and all this kind of thing. And you could say, there's a school of thought of trying to time it to the stage at which the build would be better for the hurricane market versus not, or the rainy season. But I don't know if you can really control a lot of those things. So I think the name of the game here is thoroughly and often inspect. A lot of new construction, and this isn't just applying to new construction homes, but a lot of new construction contracts aren't openly being like, please inspect this home a bunch of times. It's more of an assumption that like you're building a house, you would just think they would inspect these. You would think that they would do all of these kind of things, but you have the right, which sometimes you might need to, sometimes you have to have that in writing in advance. So it'd be one of the things I would check on. They're not allowed to block you from inspecting a home. You just have to communicate in a way that works for both parties, right? You can't just run third-party inspectors or anyone you want on a open live construction site willy-nilly. So you have to have it in writing and you have to schedule it and it has to have their okay, but they're not okaying yay or nay to inspecting. It's just a logistics scheduling thing. And so you read a lot of contracts and a lot of times it's not mentioned. It's like an addendum and stuff like that. So one thing I would really do is say, spend $1,000 and do thorough inspections and do them at every stage. Do them if you're worried about structure, you have slab, you have pre-drywall, which is your last chance to see behind what's going to be behind the walls. You have final inspections, of course. So the best way to do it is have someone that's really vested to make sure that as you go about the process, you continually to do it. It might cost you $1,000, $2,000, but versus that being an issue, that's your best thing. Is I think it's catch it early versus like try to figure out how you can control that it never exists. I think would be a lot harder to do. Okay. Question number 3. As someone who just purchased a new construction home in the Sarasota area and is preparing to relocate, what are your top recommendations for making the transition smooth? And what should I know about living in the community and local real estate market post-move? Are there specific tips for new construction buyers to maximize their investment and quickly get integrated into Sarasota life? Yeah, I think the low-hanging fruit one is there's a ton of groups. I think Lakewood Ranch has like 60 active plus community groups. There is pickleball. There are all these like social environments. There's Facebook groups. There's moms groups. There's dads groups. There's school events, all that kind of thing, depending on who you are. One thing I throw on top of all of that, the part that really assists with this is that for the most part, Sarasota is a melting pot. The master plan suburbs, if you think about the density of the people that relocated from out of state there as a percentage of the total population that lives there, it's very large. So the openness to everybody else wanting this same thing is the part that I think satiates that need the best. Like there's a gentleman on our team, David Salkin. I've mentioned this on video in the past, but he moved from New Jersey with just his wife, brought his kids down eventually. But even being social like someone like that, he said it was like being a freshman in college again. Everyone knows their spouse, whoever they move with, just themselves, whatever it may be, and they're walking into a new situation. But since everybody else is walking into a similar situation, then it's a little easier to find your crew if you're not someone that wants to necessarily like seek out some sort of like singles club or couples club or anything like that, which I wouldn't be. So I think it happens more naturally than you would think because you're not going to end up in a random spot. You're going to have the same anxiety and nerves everybody else has doing so. And that would be the quickest way to get integrated is that everybody else is doing the same. Hey guys, super quick interruption here. If you've been enjoying these videos at all, but want a way more personalized guide to your own relocation, you need to check out my newly released New Home Geeks Audit. No phone calls, no pressure. Fill out a really brief form, and I will personally send you my custom recommendations on how I would basically approach your move. This includes specific communities, ideal timing, and detailed next steps, all within a couple days of your inquiry. The link is in the description box below. Please check that out. And without further ado, let's resume. Question number 4 probably rolls into this really quick. I'm just kind of like looking ahead. What are the benefits of living within Lakewood Ranch, Florida, as opposed to living nearby it? It makes all of this easier. If you move to an area that isn't just new construction based, but has a master plan, for lack of better words, that of having a bunch of new construction communities over a 20-year span that come together for communal amenities. So your neighbor can live in a $3 million house. You could live in a $400,000 townhouse, and you guys go to the same farmer's market. You go to the same downtown in the district, the same restaurants repeatedly, the clubs and the kids' sports, the schools. They're made to integrate in these areas. If you live outside of it and say you bought in a random neighborhood in northeast Sarasota, that's like just below Fruitville Commons for interest, which hints at this question, gives you access to all this stuff. But do I need to live in Lakewood Ranch if all these communal districts are public? It's a valid question. The difference there is you're at the mercy of generational transitions, right? There is a community in Lakewood Ranch called Summerfield. It was built in 1995. So think about how many different life stages could exist there. You could have someone that bought it in 95 for $96,000, which would be amazing. House is worth probably $500 now, that never left. So think about the age that person may be. If they're at house buying age, like best case, they were in their low 20s. So, it's 95, today is 2025. Think about where they're going to be in their life. You're going to have the people that bought those homes and then hopped up to Mallory Park or Central Park when they started building at Lakewood Ranch, 5-6 years. Most people don't live in, I don't even know if they live in the house for 7 years now. And then so someone else came in behind them. But was that another person of their demographic that's starting fresh there? Or was it an older person that's moving as an empty nester? So all that to say, if a neighborhood's existed for a really long time, then we get that question a lot. No one can really say that technically of like, everybody wants to know the demographic. They want to know, am I going to move to this area? Are there going to be other kids my kids can play with? Are there going to be like million kids on the street? I don't want to necessarily get away from kids, but like, I don't know. I'm past that life stage. I don't want them in every single house. Everybody's trying to get some sort of like, are these people going to be of like mind and like interest to me? And you can't, it's impossible to do. I mean, you could crawl tax records if you wanted to and try to reverse engineer that. But the best way to do it is that don't rely on one specific neighborhood. A Lakewood Ranch would allow the 50 plus neighborhoods to be your community. And you're not at the mercy of making all of your friends and acquaintances in your one specific 400 home neighborhood. All right, number 5. Once you have made the decision on the location to relocate to Florida, Parrish, for example, what's next? Selection of the builder, selecting a specific community. What, in order of importance, would you rank these kind of decisions? Lot premiums, models, design options, etc. Okay, so you're definitely on the right track to say what circle on a map do I want to live in? Like in so you've decided in Parrish versus Lakewood Ranch, or you've decided Parrish. The only way you can physically get to that decision is most likely a combination of you were looking at another area and then this one out. Parrish is an area that you'd probably look at Lakewood Ranch. You maybe have a tie to some Tampa potentially, but you want to live on the Sarasota side. And it's a cost thing. Sometimes people want to go to Parrish because Lakewood Ranch is too busy and too much. Most of the time it's cost. It has a very similar vibe. It goes in a similar direction to the things. And you say, okay, if Lakewood Ranch gives me an average neighborhood of 15 miles one way to downtown, which is going to put you over 30 minutes probably, and Parrish gives me an average of additional 12 to 15 plus minutes from those same things, what do I gain for doing so? And if Lakewood Ranch's median cost is $680 and Parrish is $410, that's what you gain. So the Savannah 2 at Windward by Neal Communities in Lakewood Ranch, $1 million, whatever it may be now, but even you cascade through history and say it was when it was at $900,000, $850,000. Well, if you went up to Canoe Creek in Parrish, somewhat of a sister community, I think you had no CDD and $180 HOAs. That's one thing. But you could also buy that house for $150,000 cheaper potentially, which pays for your pool, lets you buy the Savannah 2 instead of the 52-foot product. So it's wider and you get more bedrooms. Or just affordability, like what you need, you have to go to that area to afford the house in general. That's how you'd end up there. So that's why it's very smart to do that, because it kind of kills 20 birds, one stone. The very next step is to say, and this is all referencing new construction, is that there's not as many new construction communities as you think. So how quickly can you get a list of the total new construction communities in Parrish, Florida? That's where I'd start, because it's not that many. So newhomesource.com is a convoluted but comprehensive source. We could obviously tell you in 2 seconds what those are, because you have a timing thing and all that kind of stuff. But if you got your list yourself, you'd figure that out while you're doing it. So you get that list of saying, like, what is it? Is it 15? Is it 20 that are considered Parrish, Florida? When I say Parrish, am I also considering the most upper part of Lakewood Ranch? Because it would be very similar, right? So if you go like State Road 64 area of Lakewood Ranch, that's a lot more like Parrish than Waterside is. So like, I wouldn't let the city name on Google and all that really pin you in. Southeastern Palmetto flirts a lot with Parrish. So make sure I look at the map when you're doing this and make sure you're circling everything that's in play. Don't worry about the city name as much, because you will alienate things on accident. And I know, if you move across the country, a lot of these names don't mean anything. So get that list. And then naturally you're not open to every builder, right? So you get the list and you're like, okay, this is Lennar and D.R. Horton. Okay, this is KB Homes. This is Centex, the affordable version of Pulte. And you're like, say you wanted like a Taylor Morrison or higher kind of thing. you might immediately, and especially in an area like Parrish, which is going to lean more on the side of not just affordable overall, but affordable builders doing affordable things, you might lose 80% of them right there. So that'll, for good or bad, right? And then you say, okay, well, these three they're dangerous with, like, if I walked in there, like, one of these builders will be fine. And then you say, okay, what are you guys all doing in here? If there's Taylor Morrison and there's Neil, for instance, like North River Ranch, Neil Communities is setting up. There's multiple builders in there. You got, like, okay, so who's actively building here and how much time do I have to decide versus, like, the maturity of the community? What are the different, like, this community is broken up in separate sections. What do they all offer? Like, how are you guys all positioned against each other? In every community you go into, it's typically in Florida, it's not two builders doing the same thing where you can just be like, I like this one more stylistically than this other one. They're always doing something else. Like, this one builder owns all these lots that, like, they're doing all 60-foot products, and this other builder's do the 52, and this is the townhome one. Not that they don't build all of those other products as well in other communities, but typically there's some sort of pecking order where they end up having a really nice community that satiates a lot of different people's lifestyle needs in one area. And so that's a lot of times this is what your decision is going to come down to, right? If you're like, okay, I love Taylor Morrison, there's 3 builders, or I love Neil, there's 4 other builders in here, for instance. Well, what size house do you need? And, like, how many builders are actually building on those kind of lots? What amenities do you want? And what sections offer those? And then when you get through all of that, you're like, okay, then that all works. Is what the builder is currently offering, is that going to make me have to revisit this entire conversation, or can I make it work? Most of these builders in the area of Parrish aren't going to be like, if I can't build with this one, I'm not building with any of them. They're all going to be kind of in the middle of the road as far as that. The differentiators are going to be those subtleties as you go through. And if you're just trying to work through, if that makes sense of what I said, then that's why I'm always like, the house is here to me, in the total search. It might not even matter for a lot of what you want yet. So that's how I would go about it. Design options would be very far down on that list. Design option, does the builder allow you to add design options, would be higher on that list, So it's a lot of a builder thing, but it's really it's a 1-in-1 or 1A, 1B to community. But we maybe make it sound like there's way more new construction communities that are apples for apples in certain areas at one time than there actually are. So if you select your area, you go narrow, who will you never build with? Even more narrow, and you can go from there. Alrighty, question number 6. Hey, Adam, I've been enjoying your YouTube channel and content for a while. My question are there good investment options for Canadians in Sarasota area right now that would combine personal use and rental ability with decent cash flow close to the beaches in downtown? We particularly enjoy the areas from downtown Sarasota to St. Armands Circle and Siesta Key. All right. So this one, to me, if you want decent cash flow, I don't know how you're defining that, but if you really want cash flow at all, and you're competing in a market as competitive as Sarasota, especially if you're going to use not even like normal rental vacancy, but if you're going to spend time there yourself and you're going to make the rental income less available for probably 3 to 4 months of the year, I would imagine, and you got to make all the rest of your money in the other 8 months of the year, then you need a couple things to happen. One, if you're financing at all, I don't know if there'll be any cap rate beyond financing. That'd be tricky, with caveats, obviously. 2, the lower rental restrictions, which is not commonality in Sarasota, is going to be helpful. On an annual rental financing, it'd be tricky. I mean, it would be tricky to guarantee that you're always going to get that, I would say. So let's say, assume you're buying cash and then you're saying, okay, I want to rent this more times than like annually or less than a 30-day minimum, something like that. Sarasota city limits allows you to do less than 30 days. So that'd be like potentially 7 days. But the city limits, Sarasota County is the whole thing. Sarasota city limits is a relatively small area. The barrier islands, depending on the island, you could get down to as low as daily. But then you're restricted also by the HOAs as well. So you got to kind of look at that and be really careful to make sure that you actually have the like approval of the barrier island rules, not individual like Zillow or MLS listings, because that is at the mercy of an agent entering them. Not that there's necessarily ill intent, but a lot of ignorance and a lot of negligence that that an agent could plead the fifth on. But you're like seeing a couple listings, you're like, okay, well, these are all daily, I'm going to be good. So I'd make sure, I mean, we have Siesta Key, it's Barrier Island, separate than Lido, separate than Longboat Key, separate than Anna Maria, Holmes, Bradenton Beach, separate than Venice Island, Englewood, Minnesota. So it's not an exact science, but you can get a lot closer. So the lower rental restrictions will allow you to obviously charge a higher premium and rent it more often. You got to, how much do you want to manage it? There's a property management in there as well. Those are things that always like sound great and then start to alienate your stuff. So that's a couple things, which I don't know if I'm necessarily someone asking this question that's like new news necessarily. But that's what I would say about that, because I've run this scenario a bunch of times. It seems like a honeypot. It seems like this stuff's super doable, but you can lose your hat real quick in fees. A lot of people that I've come across, when they see all the cap rate stuff, they're maybe not aware that's all cash purchases. So if there's like a 3% cap rate and you're like, great, I'll probably be good even if the fees increase, but then you're financing, like no one's considering cap rate post finance. So that's what I've seen that. But then also like if Sarasota is an area that I preach as it's a great homestead because it's hard to mess up. I mean, it's always going to be popular and these areas are always going to be popular. So I think you're on the right track of, if you want to play like the don't get weird card, which I always say on here, then, I would stay closer to the magical triangle, downtown Sarasota, point 1, triangle point number 2, Lido, St. Armands Circle, southern Longboat Key, like Longboat Key Resort and below. And then point number 3, 6 miles below that, Siesta Key, and the northern island. So you have multiple bridge access, multiple variety, all the shopping. You have Siesta Key Village, St. Armands Circle, downtown, and you have the bay in between. That's going to be your best shot of, if someone could pick and money wasn't an issue, they would go to that area. It's going to be the best pick of people that are going to be in a demographic that could afford this stuff. You could rent potentially a lot of cool scenarios, right? If you can get in low rental restrictions, you could rent, 2-3 months at a time at a high rate for the season. Maybe you want to come in off seasons on purpose so you can take advantage of that. But then also you can rent in between, maybe daily or weekly, to take advantage of that. So you could catch a seasonality where it almost isn't seasonality if you play it right, because there's always going to be people that can travel when other people can't. They can time things when other people can't. And if all of your stuff's weird, like none of it's annual rental, then maybe you get the highest price in all the scenarios with a little bit more of a guarantee for you. And then a lot of these people visit every single year and never buy. So you could potentially have someone that just wants a guarantee they'll get it every year, and you could trade terms for doing so. Last thought, maybe you visit east of the trail as well. Everybody's trying to shove as close as they can get to the water, as close as they can get to the water, but east of Tamiami Trail, not weird, east and central, Arlington Park, some areas like that could be a way to sneak your way in. All right, number 7, we are at 28 minutes. All right, we're moving. You use the term peacock in your videos to describe various developments. I'm not sure if it's intended to be a pro or con using the word peacock. I do say that a lot. Can you describe some pros and cons of a peacock in the context that you use the word? So typically when I talk about the whole state or individual communities, what I consider a peacock is something on the fringes. So like I would view Sarasota, Florida as a lot less of a peacock than Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Seaside, or Jacksonville, Amelia Island. Because when I'm looking for total value of anything, I want like the most central. If everybody could pick only one, not like what they think is really cool, only one, what's the safest bet? So I want to be kind of in the middle. I don't want to be in Marco Island or Clearwater. I want to be in the central Sarasota because I can access the rest. But if I had to pick one homestead, I can look up north, I can look south. I'm 3.5 miles from most things. You get to like Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Amelia Island, you're damn near in Georgia. So you get there, it's cool. But what else do you have beyond that? And is that better than Sarasota's version? Same with the Panhandle. I really like the Panhandle myself. My wife is from Gulf Breeze. We went to school at University of West Florida. So I spent a lot of time in that area. But again, it's taking a chance, right? Not only storm stuff, but it's almost in Alabama. I mean, if you miss an exit for the school I went to for a couple of years, you're in Mobile. So, once you get there, it's great. But what else do you have? And that's kind of my premise of everything. So when you get to a community level, a peacock would be Seaflower. A peacock would be Beach Walk by Minnesota Key. These are areas that offer something that other areas don't. But that is their main value. So not as many people are going to value that as well. And a lot of times they're more innovative and they're first movers in that respect. So, you're taking a chance of somewhat, So On the pro and con side, like let's take Seaflower. Seaflower is took a defunct flower farm. They're building, a few thousand homes on it. It's in Western Bradenton, so it's not that far from downtown Sarasota. It's like less than 4 miles to the beach. A really interesting spot. It's really hard for them, and it's master plan, so it's not just one like individual neighborhood like Aqua, like they've done in the past, where people are like, it's just like it's a big chance to build $1 million home here. This one's going to have like a farmer's market, commercial space as part of the plan, so that helps too. Because if they can build a big enough bubble, then some of the hesitancy people had with that area, which is a little choppier. It's like not as mature. It's like, when's this thing going to evolve? Because it's more of a historic area. It alleviates that because they're like, once I get here, I'm good. I mean, it's like a whole thing. So it offers that. But at the same time, you're in Western Bradenton. So for all those negatives, it's like you have to make the decision of once you get there, your little pocket's nice, but the rest is going to look materially different. And they're not going to be able to build a bunch of other things around it. And then also you're close to the beach, but you're close to a particular beach. And that is the northern ones. It's Bradenton Beach, that's Holmes. And so if you love Siesta Key, you're not, it's not for you. Beach Walk by Minnesota Key, that is 2.5 miles one way from the beach. You can go. It's like the only community you can golf cart with new construction homes. It's incredibly rare. It's pretty close to downtown Welland Park too, in southern Venice, western Northport area. So a lot of people are really hot on that as well right now. And to get that close to the beach, it's like almost seems like fake. If you look, and the amenities are great, all that kind of thing. But you're in northern Englewood, 45, 50 minutes one way from downtown Sarasota. It's always going to be that. Now, some people, they're like, great, I love what that is, but it's never going to rank above the main area that Sarasota got popular for a million years ago, because it gives you that one, but there's nothing below Englewood. You fall off into the water and then it hits Cape Coral so it gets you a little bit, actually, as south as it is, it actually gets you a little bit awkward to multiple locations, right? Because you can't, unless you're on a boat, you have to go east and south to get to Naples, Fort Myers area. You're not that close to any of the Sarasota stuff, and it gets you further from Tampa at the same time. So you're gaining 2.5 miles of the beach from doing so, but that's where you lose, So none of these are going to be ever as safe as the main thing, but the pro and con of it is, I think, is personal to you. The one thing is that if you thought Beach Walk was cool, but you're going to be constantly worrying about like, did I mess this up? Then it's definitely not for you. If you're like, everyone's going to run left and I'm running right, then it is for you. But it's like kind of how I view luxury condominiums. At a certain point, economics wise, geography wise, it's not going to rank above those other ones. But if the one pro in that weighted formula that is your own formula is 10 points higher than anything else you put on that list, then for you, it works out great. But I think you got to come to a no regrets model there. There's some slight maybe equity advantages and stuff like that if you get in early where other people didn't. But I don't know if the chance of what it is might outweigh that alone. I don't think it's as compelling where that would be the reason you did it. Hey guys, super quick interruption here. If you've been enjoying these videos at all, but want a way more personalized guide to your own relocation, you need to check out my newly released New Home Geeks Audit. No phone calls, no pressure. Fill out a really brief form, and I will personally send you my custom recommendations on how I would basically approach your move. This includes specific communities, ideal timing, and detailed next steps, all within a couple days of your inquiry. The link is in the description box below. Please check that out. And without further ado, let's resume. Number 8, when contemplating purchasing a new construction home in Lakewood Ranch or elsewhere, how much leverage is there in reducing cost of land and construction upgrades available to choose from? I hit this, I think, the last 2 episodes too. There's more leverage than there's ever been. They don't love to negotiate principal as much because, if they've sold homes 2 years ago and you're buying that same model today, then they have to be cognizant that they can't mess this up. There are appraisals. There's an 8-year build out of a community. They got to figure out a way to guess this thing correct, and them decreasing the front facing price is tricky. I wouldn't view it as much as land and design upgrades and stuff as much as a total pot of money. I would try to see what are they giving naturally, and then are they accepting offers? So what they're going to do is most new construction developers are going to they're going to try to give you money towards financing, and they're going to try to give you design stuff. And they typically own a mortgage and a title company. A lot of them do. And then design is from a list. So it's a supply chain thing. I don't know how much of that they control as well. They're going to try to give you money that does not affect the principal if they can. Rate, buy down, stuff like that. what I would do is I would like kind of collectively see what naturally they're offering, because they do a flavor of the month thing, right? They're trying to see like, do you want us to fly you down, fly and buy? They'll go after interest rates real heavy. They're trying to figure out a similar amount of money that they maneuver and position a different way to different people to see what kind of fancy it strikes. But either way, if you just like say, how much does this actually equal in dollars naturally? Are they accepting offers? I would take all of that, see if there's any information that you could gain to give a case for this should cost less. Like, is there any history of it? Anything that you can glean. And then I would bring all that in and I would try to go for principal myself. So if this house cost 1.2 million and you take all of this money they're offering, like say they're giving you $60,000 toward design or whatever, I would try to maybe make that equal $100,000, but I would just offer it flat off the price. Is like, don't worry about any of this. I want to do this. However they maneuver it after the fact, as long as it nets out to the same to you, I wouldn't be super worried about it. And that's how you got to kind of have play the game like that. Strong arming off particular things, saying I'm only going to negotiate off a principle and that kind of thing. Like at a certain point, they're just not going to do it. I mean, these are huge companies, but you never know. And I've seen stuff that surprised me all the time. That's where I'd start, but I would use a little bit more honey than I think people like to do. I don't think it's like whose posturing ego can win this thing. It's like, can you get that money? And however, whether Neil or MI thinks that like they won that arrangement or they didn't. If it's the same money, who cares, So I would figure out like what a salesperson at that new construction development, what they could physically do and bring back to their bosses. And I try to play that game and work your way around. There's many ways to get the same pot of money to me, but I like to play with honey. I like to use the relationships. I don't like to strong arm as much as I like to get what I want to get anyway through the best means possible with the person I'm dealing with. And so I think it is a moving target that has a lot of little strings you could pull. Everyone's a little different, but if you could do it, I would go after the actual purchase price of the home. Number 9, in your last video, you commented, and I think correctly, that the price creep of the upper end of semi-custom homes, i.e. Taylor Morrison, which I wouldn't consider semi-custom, but I get what you're saying. Taylor Morrison in particular were priced too high when factoring in all the add-on material upgrades, lot upgrades, pool upgrades, etc., leaving, for example, a base price of $865K to becoming more like 1.2, 1.3 million. So this is referencing like the Palazzo, for instance. I had a base price of maybe $657 at one point, and they're selling for like 1.3, 1.4 now. So my question back in 2008, 2011, prices dropped significantly, and most home buyers who bought in the run-up found themselves significantly underwater with houses selling for 50% of their original offering price. It took 5 years to see that drop. Do you see that happening again? When markets increase sharply, they generally return to the mean. Would you agree? I find it difficult to pay 3 times what a house sold for 5 years ago. I won't go crazy on this one, and I can maybe talk to this person individually, but I agree to a point. And yes, that has happened. And, I think at that time, the financial distress of that market was different and people got in situations. But what I think it basically boils down to primarily is the wrong initial purchases. That like during the crisis back then, you had people that were getting these loans they should have never gotten, had multiple homes, and then one person doesn't pay their mortgage on that rental, it all crushes. So what do they have to do? They have to sell, or it's going to get taken, or it gets taken. The wrong decision to buy that house, buy too many houses, buy them at the wrong price, was not great, but them having to sell earlier than they would have liked to is where they realized the loss. If they never had to sell that, then this wouldn't be a thing, right? Over time, just like you go buy a King Ranch truck, $85,000. I mean, on a 6-year loan, you're underwater 99.99% of that the whole time, right? But you're only it only matters if you need to sell it, you want to get rid of it, you wanted to do something else. That's when the underwater are really going to hurt you. And, and what's happening now is like you have, I've seen a $1.4 million Lazio. That was a base price of $480,000 in 2021. So, if a builder, there's all these different scenarios, but it comes down to that same thing, right? It's like irresponsible purchases, not to be harsh, but which it could be assisted by a lot of people, right? Builders that don't care and are selling lots that should cost $50,000 that during COVID go to lottery bids, and they sell these lots for $300,000. And we think there's going to be no consequence to that. A base price house of $480 that buys a lot for $300K, maybe it has deeded golf, maybe it doesn't, but like there's no way that ends up making sense, right? Because the land doesn't cost that. Like, so one person made money, but it messes up that entire arrangement. There's no coming back from that, right? So when you go to sell that house and you lose the money, what are you losing? You're losing the chunk of cash of that was the bad part. It was the part that never should have been there. Over upgraded and a lot costing something that it shouldn't have cost, and was sold for a reason that it should have never been sold for. I think all the scenarios I've seen are that. Now, I think there's a school of thought to say that, again, it's only so that if you build a Lazio for 1.4 million, how do we even know you did that? It's because you have to sell it. So I would imagine your plan wasn't to sell it that early. So you could have been like, I don't care. I mean, I'm just going to force my way in this community. I don't care. I get the land shouldn't cost that, but I don't care. I get to golf. I'm going to be here. And if you stayed for 15 years, this wouldn't matter near as much, right? So that's what I'm seeing happen. I think the people that are in situations right now are like during this weird economy and all this kind of stuff, depending on what you're in, that are in some distress and having to sell these houses. If you bought it only a couple of years ago, then I think it's going to be tricky overall. And if you listen, I mean, if you followed me for a while, I take very serious the initial purchase. And I mean, maybe even to a fault. I mean, the biggest things when I first started this business that people gave me a hard time about was, I mean, I think 98% of the value is before you bought. It's like the geography. I must overeducate to a point. I play on a rule, like, I don't want you to be mad at me 2 years from now. So I'm going for like, if it was my money, what would I have done? And anyone that's talked to me personally, you could ask. I mean, I always are in that vein, nothing weird, nothing. I'm not taking big chances, none of that kind of stuff. I know what all these houses used to cost. And just because it's 3 years removed from that, how much should it's not like really how much did it increase? Well, it is kind of, but also how much should a 2,200 square foot house cost? How many people could possibly live there? Like, what's the end game here? If you buy this, if you sell it, could the next person ever make any money ever? Like 10 years from now, would it ever go up? Some of these purchases, the answer is no. It only can go down because you can't make a 2,200 square foot house cost $2 million ever. So if you're buying it at $1 million, who could live there, that has that same amount of money? So is it ever going to be worth 1, 2? That if you just get that rule right, I don't know if you'll ever be in a huge issue like this. As I let this digress, the 50% decrease thing, the thing with that is these houses don't cost enough to decrease 50% unless you made a wild decision. Like a house that costs $900K, it can't drop to $450. Like it is like, just because there's no reason it could. I mean, so what we're going to see is, I think we're going to see a lot of this like 25%, 20% kind of stuff. People over upgraded. They're tired of Florida. They want to leave. They don't care. Which it allows for them to take a little bit of a hit, but it doesn't crush them. You lose 50% of your house. Like, I don't even know what you could buy where that would happen. I mean, I think builders can get greedy and people can make wrong forecasts, but not by that much. So I don't think we're in now, I mean, that's a broad brush that things drop 50%. I mean, how many of the homes dropped 50%? I'm sure it wasn't the majority, but I think what we're in now is materially different than what any sort of crash in the past was, even though like it's cyclical. I get all that. And then also there's a lot more mitigation on short sales and foreclosures than there was. So I think a lot more people are able to hold on to stuff with unique arrangements to their financing. Okay, last one. What's going on with homeowners insurance and how should I factor it in when considering a primary residence or investment property? Ultimately, I prefer to have money going towards something tangible, such as square footage, amenities, enjoyment, rather than wasting it on insurance. Agreed. One thing, very broad brush, not near as bad as the news makes it sound. Everything's not crashing and burning. Everything I'm looking at is normal insurance. If you buy a new construction home, that's one thing you got to consider too. Most of the people relocating with us are not on barrier islands. They're 8 to 15 plus miles one way from the water. Most of Sarasota is. That hugs the interstate line. And then you have the bay and barrier islands that protect the mainland. So you're not, and then in a new construction house or anything like this, they build the individual elevation of the plots of land up. So you're normal. And then you have the newest materials and all that kind of stuff. Two, in addition to that, it's not an exacta science, but guessing, you don't need to guess at all. You can take real properties that you're trying to do, new construction or not, and run that through an insurance agent to know exactly what this will be and find out without guessing at all. You can do it property to property, area to area, and see all of that kind of thing. So I would encourage you to do that both with mortgage, closing, and insurance. Don't guess at any of this kind of stuff. You could get down to less than a percentage point of what this will actually be. And there's not a lot of variability to new construction if an insurance agent gives you a quote. And 3, so take an extreme example. We just sold a house on Longboat Key. It was a single family. You got a really good deal. It's on the upper part of the key. And to get a hurricane deductible, they made him meet conditions. Not that they wouldn't give it to him, but they're not allowing you to be able to pay a deductible, get your whole thing replaced without any protection on the home. So they basically made him get a wind mitt. There was a couple protections of the homes he had to add so that at least it would try to stop the hurricane from wiping this thing out. And then they're like, great, you have this on, you're doing your part, we'll do our part, give you a deductible. So now he has hurricane protection. So I've found that the no ability to get insurance is not very true. 99.9% of the people that move here are not going to be even in these conversations. And if you are someone that's trying to buy a unique investment that's near the water or something like that, then just like you would with the investment analysis of cap rate, you can run this 100% through real scenarios, and you don't have to use those same people. All of these people are in the business of giving you quotes on stuff as their main lead gen. So they're going to run at the opportunity to try to give you quotes and beat quotes. You can ask questions, learn everything, and then take that if you want and go get your insurance with someone else. But that education process I find to be very easy to do, and it shouldn't be your burden, right? Because you don't own the insurance company, so you should ask them, say, I have this property I'm looking at doing, and I'm missing the numbers, and can you give those to me? So that's number 10. Thank you guys so much for tuning into my content. This was Real Estate Ruminations, episode number 3 on the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel. Again, my name's Adam Hancock. Please check out our new Home Geeks audit if you want more personalized information for yourself. We have a great 30-day newsletter that's like a manifesto. We have relocation guides on the website, written word versions of the video, audio only versions of the video, and these questions, if you want to ask a question directly to have answered on potentially our next episode, go to the link below. We are posting every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern here on the channel you're watching now. Thank you guys so much for watching any of my content. We'll see you on the next one.